They fined me $47,000.
I didn't move into that neighborhood because it was perfect. I moved there because it was quiet, predictable, and invisible. Cedar Grove Estate sat just outside the city limits, the kind of place where nothing ever happened and people liked it that way. Perfect lawns. Identical mailboxes. Flags hung at the exact same angle. It looked peaceful, but it wasn't free. What I didn't know at the time was that peace came with a price. And that price was obedience. I was 63 years old, retired, and intentionally boring. No parties. No noise. No visitors. I liked it that way. After decades of dealing with systems, rules, and people who loved power more than responsibility, I wanted silence. The HOA brochure promised community standards and property value protection. What it didn't mention was the woman who treated those words like weapons. Her name was Melissa Carter. She wasn't the HOA president, not officially. But she ran everything. She had that look people get when they've been given just enough authority to hurt others and just enough protection to feel untouchable. Always smiling. Always watching. Always waiting for someone to slip. The first time she knocked on my door, I assumed it was routine. That assumption cost me nearly everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I opened the door and saw her standing there with a clipboard pressed tight against her chest. She didn't introduce herself like a neighbor. She introduced herself like enforcement. She said my mailbox was an inch too low. Not broken. Not unsafe. Not blocking anything. Just wrong. I told her it had been that way for over 20 years. She told me rules change. That should have been the end of it. A warning. A conversation. A normal human interaction. Instead, it was the beginning of a campaign. Within a week, I received my first fine. $250. Not for refusing to comply, but for delay in corrective action. That's when I realized this wasn't about fixing anything. It was about testing me. So I didn't rush. And she noticed. The fines started stacking. Mailbox. Grass height. Trash can visibility. Each violation smaller than the last, but the penalties grew larger every time. Every letter arrived by certified mail, heavy with legal language meant to scare people into compliance. Words like escalation, non-compliance, board authority. Most people would have folded right there. But I wasn't most people. I wasn't angry yet. I was curious. Because something about her behavior didn't feel random. She wasn't reacting, she was hunting. And I needed to know why. The HOA meeting confirmed it. Melissa sat at the front table like a judge, not a volunteer. She read violations out loud, slowly, savoring each one like a sentence being handed down. When she reached my name, the room went quiet. She listed my offenses with theatrical disappointment, then announced the total. $3,750. Gasps. Murmurs. Eyes avoiding mine. I stood up calmly and said what everyone else was thinking. This is harassment. She smiled and replied with the sentence she'd probably practiced in the mirror. If you don't like the rules, you're free to sell your home. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about rules. It was about pushing people out. I later learned I wasn't the first. Families who questioned fines mysteriously faced foreclosure threats. Elderly homeowners who fell behind were pressured to sell. Properties were bought cheap by investors connected to people on the board. It was a system. And Melissa was very good at it. The police showed up a week later, lights flashing. Neighbors watching from behind curtains. Melissa standing nearby with her arms crossed like she'd just won something. She claimed I was hostile and refusing enforcement. The officers spoke to me for less than a minute before realizing what was happening. They told her, very clearly, that they don't enforce HOA rules. She didn't argue. She just watched. And when they left, she leaned in close enough that I could smell her perfume and whispered that this wasn't over. She wasn't threatening me. She was promising. The next letter was different. This one mentioned liens. Then foreclosure. The total amount had crossed $14,000. 4 a mailbox. 4 grass. 4 trash cans. That night, I spread every notice across my kitchen table and read them carefully. Not with fear, but with focus. Because Melissa had made a critical mistake. She assumed I was just another quiet retiree who didn't know how systems worked. She assumed wrong. A few days later, construction crews arrived. They began installing fencing near the back of my property, blocking a narrow access road most people didn't even notice. Melissa stood there supervising like a general overseeing a siege. When I asked what they were doing, she told me the HOA was reclaiming common land. I told her that road wasn't HOA property. She told me the HOA record said otherwise. That's when the situation stopped being annoying. And became serious. Because that road wasn't just access. It was a federally registered utility easement. She didn't know that. But I did. I had spent decades working in infrastructure compliance, the kind of job nobody remembers until something goes wrong. The kind of work that exists quietly in the background, until someone violates it. Blocking that easement wasn't an HOA issue. It was a federal one. And once I made the call, there was no undoing it. The response was faster than she expected. Unmarked vehicles. Serious people. No sirens. No shouting. Just authority. Melissa tried to assert HOA jurisdiction. Tried to claim private property rights. Tried to talk her way out. None of it mattered. They explained, calmly, that her HOA had obstructed protected infrastructure, falsified land records, and potentially committed fraud. Her confidence collapsed in real time. She looked at me like she'd just realized she'd been playing chess with someone who never told her the rules had changed. The investigation spread quickly. HOA finances frozen. Board members resigning. Attorneys distancing themselves. Neighbors who had stayed silent suddenly found their voices. And Melissa? She was charged personally. The HOA didn't find me again. It didn't exist anymore. I still live in that house. The mailbox never moved. And every time I walk past that access road, I'm reminded of something important. People who abuse small power always assume no one's watching. They're usually wrong.